Nice and thick.
You guys see my underwear?
What?
You guys see my underwear?
You mean Speedos?
Speedos?
Whitey tighty?
Does anybody wear whitey ties anymore?
Yes.
I'm talking about my lucky underwear. When I talk to the school, I need them. I need them for that speech. I'm already nervous, and so I got one pair of lucky underwear. They're Bengal colors, my favorite team. For some reason, every time something important happened in my life, I've had these underwear on. I need them. I'm superstitious, you know that. They're the same underwear when I got the call, I got the part in Think Like a Man. I got the call that I was in Ride Along. It's the same orange and black pair.
Check the laundry room, babe. They have to be here.
Gene! Gene, you see my underwear?
Why would I see your underwear?
I'm missing my lucky orange and black pair.
Why are you asking me?
Can you stand up? Can I just see what Georgie got on?
Hey, man. You wanna see the whole thing?
No, just don't make it weird.
I don't know what you wanna see.
Don't make it weird. Gene's the only person that could have taken the underwear. Now, I'm not saying he took them on purpose, but he might have got mixed up in his laundry. It's gotta be Gene.
All right. We good?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's time for me to go. Because I'm not gonna be living in a house where somebody thinks I would wear another man's drawers.
All right.
Where you going?
Checking laundry room again.
That don't sound like the laundry room.
Gary Owen, thanks so much for being here.
Hello.
Gary, let's start from the beginning with this show. What made you want to do a reality show about your family?
I never thought about doing reality TV, and I feel like I'm name dropping, but I had a random meeting with T.I., and he was telling me, I was just telling him my story and stuff, and he goes, you ever thought about reality TV? And I was like, no, and he was telling me about Family Hustle, and he introduced me to this lady named Stella, who now is Mariah Carey's manager. God, I'm name dropping out the ass right now. And then
That's so cool.
Right? Then she introduces to Buna Murray, and that's what they do. They do Keeping Up with Our Kardashians. They started with The Real World, and we went and pitched it to about 8 different networks. And BET made the most sense to me because I was already established at that network. So any other network would have been, we got this new star in a new show. With BET, it's like, oh, Gary's got a show on BET. It's like their audience already knew me.
Well, let's talk about that too. You are very well known at BET. How did that happen? How did you become a rising star at the Black Entertainment Network?
Well, they're the first ones that put me on TV. I mean, I would have been on Telemundo if they would have gave me a shot, But it was just when I first started doing stand-up, my first break was to get on BET's Comic View, and then I became the host, and then everything just that made me a headlining comic. And I never had the comic grind, so to speak, where I started as a host and then moved to feature. Like, I was in the military, so I couldn't travel as a stand-up when I started. I had to go to work every day. And then I got out, and I started doing it full time and became the host, and it was like, bam, it happened real fast.
Was there ever any pushback when you were the host of the BET show? Did any comics come on and be like, oh, you're the host of the BET stand-up showcase?
It was a little bit, but I talked to Samore, who was the host a few years before me, and she goes, I got pushed back because I was the first woman to be a host. She goes, you being white just makes it easy for people to get upset, But she said the best thing you do is just be yourself, and then once people get to know you, then they'll realize this isn't an act. This is really who I am.
Right. So then, when you set off to do this show with your family, how did you pitch it to them? How did the idea come up? Were they excited about it?
No, my wife wasn't too thrilled because that's her guilty pleasure is like Love and Hip Hop and the Housewives shows. Stevie. She likes that type of stuff.
And like a guilty pleasure is much different than actually like being a part of a guilty pleasure yourself.
Well, she says she watches those shows because it makes her feel really good about herself. Like, oh, I really got my life together, She goes, I don't want somebody watching our show feeling that. Like, I'm going to watch the Gary Owen Show and see how messed up they are to make me feel better. But, I convinced them, and T.I. talked to him about what he's went through because he's got kids. And my biggest concern was the kids. Like, with social media, there could be some bad things said and how they can handle it.
Well, none of them come off poorly at all. This isn't the situation where people are fighting with each other or yelling at each other for the most part. It's like a good, wholesome family doing activities together.
Yeah, we haven't got any backlash, I'll be honest with you. On social media, racially, and that was the big thing with BET. I mean, you got a white guy as the lead on Black Entertainment Television. They was worried how it can be perceived, and there's been absolutely none. I mean, none. They're only going to have a few comments on Twitter.
Well, you're at this point, though, you're not like a new face in the black community in terms of black entertainment. You know, you've been on BET for a long time. You're in Ride Along, Think Like a Man. You know, like you've been around for a little while.
Yeah, it's like I'm the Karl Malone of comedy. Like, he was the one black guy in Utah for a long time. Yeah, it's like, and it's funny how my career just turned out because it was, you know, every movie I've been in except one was had a black lead actor. It was Daddy Daycare with Eddie Murphy. It was Held Up with Jamie Foxx. It was Rebound with Martin Lawrence. It was Little Man with the Wayans and then Think Like a Man's and Ride Along. And the one movie that was like an all-white cast was a movie called College. It tanked. It was my one movie. I was like, nobody saw it, but it was a good movie. But, you know, we got super bad backlash off that because we came out a few months after the movie Superbad, and we pretty much had the same main three characters in our movie, and but it was a different movie. And I remember
Superbad was like a massive hit.
Yeah, College wasn't. It wasn't at all. Like, I think we came out on Friday. I think we was a Blockbuster on Tuesday. It was that fast they pulled it. I said, give us a week to build. You know?
Did you ever start noticing the sort of the pattern in where and how your career was going and the audience that you were developing?
I was very aware, yeah, very much. Well, you know, that's how I first got on BET was when I was in the military, I wanted to do stand-up, and I tried to get on stage in the mainstream rooms down in San Diego, and I could only get up once a week if I was lucky. And a couple black guys I was stationed with started telling me about these quote-unquote hood spots, the black spots. I could get up 3-4 times a week, and I was like, I'm going to go. I just want to get on stage. I don't care who's in the audience. So I started going to all the black spots in San Diego to perform. And that's where BET got wind of me because a couple of the producers came down for a show, and there was a contest. It was the funniest black comedian in San Diego contest. And it was a radio calling contest, though. So I called in, and I didn't say I was black or I wasn't black. I just called in and said I want to enter. So I ended up winning the whole thing. And then one of the producers from Comic View was there, and he saw me, and he said, you should come up and showcase for Comic View and see if you can get on the show, and that's how I got on. So when I first started, it was the black comedy spots I could get on stage.
Do you think that those spots being the first spots that you started performing and where you could perform sort of changed or shaped who you are as a comic and how you perform?
Yeah, well, it opened my eyes because, you know, I think a lot of white comics or mainstream comics, they're going off Def Jam or Showtime at the Apollo. And when you watch those shows, like, you got the feel that black audiences can be intimidating because people are getting booed. I don't think you've ever seen comics get booed on TV before. And when I started doing the black rooms, I found it wasn't like that. It's just, people just come to laugh. If you're funny, you're funny. And that is the difference, though, because black people let you know real quick if you're not funny. You know what I mean? Like, white people work with you a little bit. Or they'll blame the person that brought them. Why'd you bring me? This guy's awful. They still won't blame you, the comic.
They'll take their time before they make their
right.
Way. Yeah.
Black audiences, you ain't funny. You got about 30-second 2-joke time limit.
So it made you sharper. It made you quick. Made you move faster.
Oh, without question. You got to hit them. I used to come and just dance. That's all I used to do. Like, whatever the hottest song was, I would just dance real quick, and the crowd be in hysterics. I'm like, okay. Then I had to catch my breath for 5 minutes, and then I'd start my act. Yeah, those days are over. I don't got to dance anymore.
You don't dance on stage
anymore? I was a sweaty mess. Oh.
So how do you plan what kind of hijinks or what sort of storylines you do on the show, on the Gary Owen Show?
Well, like the first episode, Chris Spencer was in Cincinnati, and he's putting this movie together about these ex-strippers that are getting back together, getting the band back together. And he asked me to be in it, and I went and asked my wife about it, and she was like, I don't think that's a good look for you to be a stripper at this point in your life. And
ex-male strippers?
Male strippers. Oh. Yeah, like the Chippendales. Yeah, but a black version, of course, me again. You know what I mean? And
we need a white guy. Get Gary Owen.
Yeah, that is true. Like, they'll call me, get Gary, you know? But in the pilot, not the pilot, but the first episode, that's what the basis is. I'm trying to convince her to let me do the movie. And I set up this whole strip club scenario, and I don't tell her. We go to this strip club, and I become the stripper. So she can see it's not, I can do it.
And how did she respond to that?
She's letting me do the movie, but, I'm definitely not. I'd probably be on the 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. shift. at a strip club right now. I wouldn't be the headliner in the middle of the day, middle of the night on a Saturday.
What was your biggest fear going into putting your family on camera and taking part in a reality show? Because a lot of times they can go really well, or even when they're going really well, they can be sort of criticized and derided. I mean, Keeping Up with the Kardashians is arguably one of the most successful shows in the world, but at the same time, it's, panned by lots of people and they're made fun of.
Well, it's what I always said is, what I try to convince to my wife is, nobody can control what's coming out of our mouth. So if we say something crazy, that's our own fault. If we do something crazy, that's our fault. We can't blame the cameras for filming us. So we're in complete control. And I'm the lead of it, but I'm also the executive producer of it. So I have a lot of say in what can and can't be on the show. And like I said, I got nobody if it's not funny, I got nobody to blame but myself. I can't blame the editors. I can't blame the studio. It's my fault if it's not funny.
And as executive producer, at the end of the day, you can also kind of protect your family in terms of what goes in and what doesn't.
Yeah, but the bad thing about it is when you're filming, they don't respect me like an executive producer. My family does. Because any other set, if you're the executive producer in the lead of the show, when you say let's do something, everybody just does it. No, not this show. No, I don't want to do that. It's hot out. No, we're gonna go outside. It's too hot, Dad. We ain't going outside today.
What about when you tell them, like, we have to go, we have a limited time with our crew here today? Do they respond to that?
I literally have to get like the grips or like craft service to hey, can you talk to my kids real quick and tell them we got to get going?
Like a big union grip guy to come over
right,
and talk to
they're
your
not
kids.
listening to me. They don't listen to me. They think I'm doing it to be mean. I'm like, no, we got to get this shot off. I don't want to be hot either.
The episode that I got the chance to see was you rent an RV and you take your kids on a road trip. Where did that idea come from?
Well, my wife always wanted to go to Niagara Falls, and we hadn't done it yet. And I had always wanted to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we hadn't done it yet. And we were on a limited schedule. We had to shoot 9 episodes in 5 weeks, which is hard. So they wanted to do a road trip episode. And at first we were going to go to L.A., and at one point we were going to go to the Bahamas, but we didn't have time. We were in a time crunch. So we just said, let's do Niagara Falls and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We could do it all in one trip. And then we just came up with the RV idea. And we let my wife pick it out, but then I went back and changed everything to make it more economical,
How often?
I grew up in a trailer park, man. That RV was nice to me in that episode.
It looked spacious. You look comfortable in that RV.
It sleeps 7.
How do you guys devise the scenarios versus sort of having just reality happen? I imagine it's scenarios and then you let reality happen within those scenarios.
Yeah, there's no script. We kind of know. We sit down and we go over what would be a good scenario, what would be a good episode, what would be entertaining to people to see. But there's never a script. There's never like, Gary, you stand here and say this. Kenya, you stand here and say this. It's like you're in the scene and you're in the moment. Even the last episode, we renew our wedding vows because our first wedding was such a disaster because the preacher walked out of we got married in 2003, the first time in Oakland,
Why did
California.
the preacher walk out?
Because he said he don't do weddings that don't start on time. And it's a black wedding, man. You knew that wasn't start on time. So we were supposed to start at 3. And I got to the church about 2:45. My wife got there about 10 after 3. So we were probably going to start about 3:30, 3:45, to be honest. At 3:15, he just walked out. Was like, I don't do weddings, don't start on time. And left. Come to find out he was double booked. He had another wedding to go to. And then the bakery dropped our cake at the reception. The lady came out. We had a 5-tier cake. She tripped, and 4 tiers fell off, so we just had the sheet. And they placed it at the end of the table, so my wife couldn't see it. So we get through. We sat there for like 30 minutes waiting to get introduced. We're like, what is the holdup? Everybody was cleaning up the cake that was on the carpet in the reception hall, and then they hid it from her until it was time to cut it. Then she saw it, and she was like, and then they had to tell her. And then my stepdad sucker punched my real dad at the reception. Just beep, just walked up to him.
Why?
Because he's trailer park. And, white trash is white trash, man.
They're trailer park and they had a grievance, and that's how they settled it.
Literally, my stepdad said my real dad looked at him funny. Like, didn't say nothing to him, didn't approach him, just looked at me funny. And that was his reason for hitting him. I was like,
poor wife. Your poor wife. How did she take all of this?
Well, here's the thing. We had 300 wedding guests. We got married in Oakland, so we had about 250 black people at the wedding, 50 white people from my side, and 2 white guys getting a fight. I was like, what are the chances of that happening? Like, her family was looking at us like, what are you marrying? They were like, you sure you want to marry? You married a white dude, you married this white dude? You know? So that's why I wanted to, for the longest, I wanted to make that wrong or right, because I still take blame for that, because I know my stepdad's a little off, so he shouldn't have been at the wedding. And
He wasn't invited to the vow renewal.
he's not in the vow renewals. But this was a chance for me to make that right, to renew our wedding vows. And that's where that episode came about. And that's when I said, just let the cameras roll and let's just don't interrupt. You know, just have them there. We did it, and it came off perfect.
Now, one of the episodes coming up, I think it's either the episode that we saw the clip for or the one following that. You're speaking to a group of kids, right? You do a big sort of group speech.
Yeah, well, that was the episode.
That was the episode
for my lucky underwear,
right.
which is a true story. They're Cincinnati Bengal colors, and for some reason, every time I've wore these draws, good things have happened, and I don't wear them a lot. Like, I wear them when big things are happening. Like, I remember I'm sitting, like, just sitting around. I get the call for Think Like a Man, and I don't know why. I went home, I go, that was crazy. I'm just, like, sitting at Cheesecake Factory and got a call to be on Think Like a Man. No audition, nothing.
Cheesecake.
Yeah. And then Ride Along was the same way. I'm just sitting around the house, and these draws, ring! Hey, you want to be in a movie with Kev and Ice Cube? I'm like, it's the draws, you know? So I go back to speak to my old high school, because my brother passed away May 20th, 2015 of a heroin overdose. And I went back and talked to the kids where me and him both went to high school, because I found out there's been, like, I think in the past 3 years, 10 kids that went to that high school have overdosed and passed away of heroin. So I wanted to go back and talk to the kids about it.
What was that like?
It's pretty intense. That episode's going to be November 22nd. It got pretty intense. I got a little emotional. I got a lot emotional, because it's tough for me to talk about in that type of setting. Because, you know, I didn't know my brother was doing heroin. Like, he called me in January 2014 and was telling me, like, I need help. I don't think I'm gonna make it. I don't want to die. He's got a little girl. He didn't want to see his daughter pass away. And I don't know what he's talking about. And then the phone drops, and his girlfriend picks it up, and she was like, Dallas just shot up. I think he overdosed. So that's when it hit me about heroin and heroin addiction, is like, that's not a choice at that point. When you know you can die and you can't stop yourself, and he's literally calling out for help. Like, he's calling me like, can you stop this? I'm on the phone. So I went and got him. Me and Mom got him, and I took him and put him in rehab at a place called the Quest House in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It was about 4 hours away from where he lived. And he was in for 5 weeks, and he got out. But after he got out, it was a couple months later, he started using again, and he overdosed a few more times. And then he finally, you know, passed away May 20th. So I just, you know, I'm trying to do what I can to help people, but I always tell people, I'm not the guy that can rattle off statistics and numbers, but there's a few things I know about the disease is one, you don't get on heroin by yourself, and you don't get off of it by yourself. And then Chris Herron, who's become a good friend of mine, I don't know his story, but he's an ex-NBA player that was using heroin pretty much. He said something that resonates with me. He says, we always focus on the worst day, but not the first day. Because you see pictures of these parents with a kid in the back seat, and they're both overdosed, or they're at home and they're overdosed, and we want to focus and just say they're bad people. You know, yeah, they're bad parents at that point, and they've made bad decisions, but it doesn't mean their life has been bad up to that point. And we always focus on that last day, and not what got them to that point, what made them start to use heroin.
And also breaking down the stigma of being a heroin user. So when someone is using, they feel comfortable coming forward and saying, I'm having this problem. Because heroin is still this drug in this country in many ways. It's like, you're using heroin? That's disgusting. You know, we shun people and push them even further into the shadows of their addiction.
I was one of those people. I'll be the first to admit it, till my brother called me. Yeah. I was the first one. Like, if you would have told me that, I'd have been like, get away. That's not my problem. That does not affect my life. But now it does. You know, so it's turned me complete 180 in how I felt about heroin addiction and how I feel now.
And you have an organization called Facing Addiction, right?
I'm a part of it.
Part of it, excuse me.
Yeah, they did a big rally last year in D.C. It was a huge concert, and they did a comedy show the night before the concert, and that was the first time I admitted how my brother passed away. I was on stage, and I just told him, this is why I'm here, because up to that point, I was embarrassed. I was like, I didn't want not for me, but I don't want people bad-mouthing my brother. So when on social media and everything else, when people found out my brother passed away, I never said how. But it was at that point I admitted it, and that's when I realized there's this whole community out there. And that's the problem, because like you said, when people say they're addicts and they want help, a lot of times they don't know where to go, and there's not help out there for them.
When parents say that their children are struggling with heroin addiction, or someone says their brother is struggling or passed away, you're right. There used to be, and I hope there isn't anymore, I think we're getting better, but there used to be judgment that was passed on that person who was a sibling of or a parent of. Less sort of sympathy and empathy, but more like, what did you do wrong for your kin to sort of start using heroin, And
it's tough being the brother, because you're like, there's a fine line between being, tough love and then being an enabler, because I don't know where to go with that. I was like, I don't know what to do. I want to help him. I put him in rehab. But then when he overdosed again, like, do I just put him in again? But I just realized after he passed away, he didn't have the resources. He didn't know where to go, and he knew where to get the heroin, but he didn't know where to get the help once he got out of rehab.
And it's like addiction is a disease, and lots of times when people pass away, they've lost their battle with a disease in the same way that you lose a battle with cancer. I think. Let's open it up to the audience for some questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Gary? I was wondering, 2 questions. What would be your best advice for inspiring stand-up comedians? And what is the hardest part about being a stand-up comic?
Best advice up-and-coming comedians is be on time and do your time, which means if you have a 9 o'clock spot, be there 8:45, be there early. And if you have 10 minutes, do 10 minutes. There's nothing worse than being on the road and you got this new guy opening for you and he's supposed to do 15. He's up there for like 45 minutes. You're like, dude, come on, man, get on the stage. And I always tell comics, man, don't always look for the easy laughs. Like, find your voice on stage while you're on stage. And I have more respect for comics that take a chance and try to do jokes that maybe don't work, but they're really opening themselves up. Because if you really look at all the comics that really take off and make it, they make it because they let you into their world. It's not just observational. You're like, this is who I am. This is how I came to be. That's what I always say. Like, when people always said, you really got a black wife. I was like, why would I make that up? Of all things, why would I make that up? That's why I just talk about what I can talk about on stage. And I hope, my job is that even though I'm married to a black lady and I have mixed kids, my job is to make sure that even if that audience is all white, they can relate to my jokes, even if they don't have my experience. I don't know if I answered your question or not. I just kind of rambled. Sorry.
No, absolutely. When did you find your voice as a stand-up? Because obviously when you first start, I would imagine your goal is to make people laugh and to sort of feel people laughing in the audience. At what point into your career were you like, okay, now I can sort of take a break a little bit and calm down on stage and sort of really search for the jokes and find my voice a bit?
I don't know if there's like an exact show or I can pinpoint it. It just kind of happens organically. I don't know. It just happens, I can't explain it. It's almost like basketball players, you just keep practicing and pretty soon, hopefully, you'll become better at free throws or a three-point shooter and just any sport, basically. You just keep practicing and getting on stage. I tell young comics that, too. I was like, don't focus on the money, so to speak. I see a lot of comics like, I gotta make some money at this, man. And they don't focus on that in the beginning. Just focus on being funny, man, because it'll all happen eventually if you just keep putting your head down and keep being funny.
Next question.
Hey, Gary. Thank you for bringing some light on this dark and cloudy day in New York City. My question for you is, it looks like you seemed to live through a lot of craziness in your lifetime. In your career, what was the most surreal moment that you've experienced?
Surreal moment? Well, I'll tell you a funny story, and I've been saving this story for a major talk show, but somebody took my story because I was on stage, and I just got to L.A., and Richard Pryor's in the audience, and he was sick, but he was still coherent, right? So his assistant came and asked me afterwards, hey, Rich wants to meet you. And I was like, awesome. And then we got a picture together, and then right as we're getting the picture, Richard leans over my ear, and he goes, don't change, don't ever change. And I was like, okay, I just got anointed. Like, the greatest comic just told me I'm funny and don't change, don't ever change. Fast forward 7 years later, I'm watching Oprah, and Monique's on Oprah, and Monique asked the same question you just asked, when did you know? When did you know, like, you made it, and what was that moment? She goes, I was I was on stage, and Richard Pryor came up afterwards, and he whispered in my ear, don't change. I said, she just took my Oprah story. So I'm thinking, even when Richard Pryor was sick and on his way out, I think he was like, I'm just going to mess with all these comics. I'm going to tell them all don't change. I bet you there's probably 30 other comics that got that same story. Richard probably was just laying in bed like, dumbasses really believe. I said, don't change.
I think we have time for one more question.
Gary, thank you so much for coming here today. My heart's all aflutter because I love you. I've always enjoyed you for many, many years. I'm part of that core audience from the very beginning of Comic View. And I, too, have a Caucasian husband and my teenage daughter. We watched the show, great success, happy for you. And she was like, oh, Mommy, I don't want to see any TV show. And I was like, no, honey, sit down, watch this, watch this. And then she started watching. She was like, oh, they're like us. And I was like, yeah. So she was happy, and she laughed, and she enjoyed it. So the one question I have for you, I've seen it asked on the internet, I've seen it asked on Twitter, never saw the answer. How do I get a Grind the Pepper t-shirt?
Oh, that's a joke. I did a joke. I did a joke a while back about, there's this girl called Superhead, and she wrote a book called Confessions of a Video Vixen, and there was a sex tape got released where she gave this guy the greatest blowjob in the history of blowjobs, and I said it just looked like she was grinding pepper, because she was like this with the hands. I don't know if this is gonna make the show, but I was like, it's like she's, every time I go to a restaurant now, whenever they're like, you want pepper on your salad? I'm like, do I? I be having some really spicy salads, No, you know what? My buddy made him, and I sold him for a little while on the road, but I'm gonna make him again. But I'll put, you know what? I'm gonna call my guy when we leave here because he's got his own silk screen shop. He just makes them. I'm gonna make some and put them back on the website for sale. So GaryOwen.com is the website. So I promise they'll be up. What is today?
Today's Wednesday, November 9th.
Before Thanksgiving, they'll be up for sale on the website. I promise. I promise.
Gary, how can people see the Gary Owen Show? When is it on?
Every Tuesday at 9:30 East Coast time. That's 8:30 Central time. After that, it gets weird. I don't know. I heard we start airing in the UK November 20th because I went over there. I went to London 2 weeks ago, and they was like, your show's coming here. So that's always neat when you know you're going to be overseas. But 9:30 East Coast time on BET every Tuesday.
Gary Owen, everybody. Gary, thanks so much for being here.